Now we'll look at Serbian news coverage of NATO airstrikes on Yugoslavia from government-controlled Radio Television Serbia in Belgrade. This portion of the news was recorded yesterday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time and translated here at C-SPAN in Washington, D.C. It's about a half hour.
You're watching primetime news of Radio Television Serbia. Good evening. Today in Belgrade, the President of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Milosevic, received today Lieutenant General Pavkovic, Commander of the Third Army, and the Commander of the Police Forces for Kosovo, Major General Sreten Lukic. After the detailed briefing, attended also by the President of Serbia, Milan Milutinovic, the Chief of Staff, Dragoljub Ojdanic, and other officials, it was concluded that the tasks pertaining to the defense of the country, the anti-terrorist operations and the security in Kosovo are successfully carried out. Members of the armed and police forces have, with self-sacrifice and dedication, stopped the greatest aggressor on earth from occupying a single foot of our soil. At the same time, they refused all of the attempts of the terrorists to penetrate into our country while internally destroying all troops and headquarters of this terrorist organization, self-appointed as KLA. Throughout Kosovo, there is civilian government and all social functions are in place. Health protection, food and medicine is provided for the citizens, many of whom left their homes due to the bombing and the terrorist actions. There has been a structure that, with the end of the aggression, can help to all citizens return to their homes. It was stated that all of the required tasks have been accomplished under very difficult circumstances, given the fact that the leaders of KLA from the very first of the aggression and with open support of the highest NATO country representatives called for a terrorist war on all structures of the government. They intended to create an effect of a general uprising in Kosovo. In these bombing conditions, this led to serious conflicts in many towns, damaging a lot of infrastructure throughout Kosovo. Especially difficult was the battle of the police forces against urban terrorism. Parallel with their security operations, police forces arrested several hundred criminals who had taken part in violent crimes, robberies and other felonies, and who represented danger for the population at large. State organs acted in accordance with the law and impartially in order to protect the property and the personal safety of the citizens. It was also noted that these measures have simply put an end to such activities. Court-martials have, in accordance with rules of war, sentenced a number of these offenders to prison terms between 5 and 20 years. The commanders of the armed and police forces expressed all other measures that need to be undertaken, pledging to carrying out consistently, legally, professionally and completely. The priority task at this moment, as President Milosevic stated, is to continue safeguarding our freedom, as well as the security, legality, stability, public order and the freedom of movement throughout Kosovo, as a prerequisite for the functioning of all the public and state organs in the interest of all citizens, regardless of their ethnicity and faith. The intensified diplomatic activity allows us to begin to see the end of this aggression against Yugoslavia. This is the opinion of many international politicians, including some who are directly involved in these criminal attacks. This estimate is supported by several key elements: the release of the 3 American soldiers, the latest peace proposals from Belgrade, and the optimism of Viktor Chernomyrdian after last night's discussions in Washington. After his discussion with Clinton on the way to resolve the crisis in Kosovo in political way and escape the cul-de-sac created by this aggression against Yugoslavia, the special envoy of the Russian president, Viktor Chernomyrdian, announced we are closer to a diplomatic solution. He expressed this to a large group of journalists in front of the White House after a meeting with Clinton that lasted for about an hour and a half. He also noted that he was going to continue discussion with Al Gore. Responding to the journalists, he said that this is a very complicated situation, but they will continue to find a resolution for it. We have a hope. And then he proceeded to confirm that the discussions encompassed possible end of the bombing. This is a key question, stated the Russian envoy, who spoke to the journalist not so much about the content of the letter of Yeltsin to President Clinton, but this is a letter that requires an immediate stop to the crisis. Other details are not known. It is quite obvious that the electronic media in the US have tried to block all of the news about this very important event, avoiding thus that through the TV and radio people could hear about this meeting, while throughout all of the other media the information was very scanty. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Avdeyev, stated that the political leaders of G8 countries agreed that the process of the regulation of the crisis in Kosovo be moved into the hands of the UN. This high official noted that after the Bonn meeting, any foreign presence in Kosovo from now on can be carried out only within the framework of UN. Thus, we no longer talk about NATO forces or ground troops, but simply that all foreign presence will be under UN jurisdiction. Avdeyev added that there was an adoption of a document acceptable to Russia, and now it's up to the foreign ministers to agree on the transferring of the authority to the UN. The ministerial should be held already next Thursday in Bonn. Moscow awaits impatiently the results of the talks between President Clinton and the special Russia envoy Chernomyrdin, who relayed a personal message from the Russian President Boris Yeltsin with suggestions for political solution of the crisis. After a 5-hour discussion with Clinton, the special Russian envoy Chernomyrdin noted that the US president expressed readiness to consider a possible end to the bombing campaign. Right now, we have to consider under what conditions this would happen, within which framework, and to what extent. There are many details that need to be specified, added Chernomyrdin, stressing that there should be no confusion whatsoever because the price paid so far has been tremendous. Chernomyrdin today discussed the resolution of the Kosovo crisis also with the Japanese Prime Minister Obuto, who expressed Japan's support for the constructive policy of Russia, as well as that they are ready to work further on a possible solution. The special Russia envoy is also to meet General Secretary of UN Kofi Annan, who has also said on his part that a peaceful political solution for Kosovo crisis will be reached. If NATO military actions continue, though, Russia will have to re-examine or freeze all of its military and technological cooperation with NATO countries, stated the Russian Minister of Defense Sergeyev, who is currently attending the summit of the Ministers of Defense of Northern Europe taking place in Norway. He also said they would have to re-examine existing armed treaties for Europe, especially regarding conventional arms, which could seriously endanger the old continent. The events in Yugoslavia show that military actions as an instrument of policy chosen by NATO lead nowhere, while they have also reversed the relations between NATO and Russia to almost Cold War parameters. The only solution is to stop the bombing and find political solution. This was also noted in the discussion between the Prime Minister Primakov and the German Interior Minister Schily, who stressed that the peace initiatives of Russia can play a decisive role. Associated Press notes that during his meeting with Chernomyrdin, Clinton used somewhat more moderate words than usual. Associated Press says that Chernomyrdin could soon bring to Belgrade the US proposal, which is largely harmonized with the 4 principles outlined by Belgrade. Chinese media report the statement of Viktor Chernomyrdin after his meeting at the White House that the diplomatic solution is at hand. The main news agency reports that one of the main topics discussed was the stopping of the bombardment. Great publicity was given to the efforts of the U.S. religious leader Jesse Jackson that led to the release of the 3 soldiers, and he's urging to use these goodwill gestures to further the political dialogue. Unlike Clinton's administration, U.S. Republican leaders think that the visit of Viktor Chernomyrdin, the release of the U.S. soldiers, and the letter from Yeltsin to Clinton are a good ground to seek political solution. And this chance should not be missed. Washington Times says that Clinton, a draft dodger from the Vietnam era, acts as a military chief now, expecting to be believed when he speaks about his war in the Balkans. This is a man who was subject to impeachment process due to sexual scandals, and now he's seeking moral authority through war. Among those who are announcing an imminent end of the war against Yugoslavia is the NATO Secretary General Javier Solana, who spoke thus to the German weekly Der Spiegel. He added that NATO is willing to accept some compromise to further a political solution, noting that the alliance no longer insists on a complete withdrawal of the Yugoslav security forces from Kosovo. The airplanes of the criminal alliance today and throughout last night attacked numerous places in our country. This aggressor alliance attacked for the first time during the middle of the day Valjevo. There were two strong explosions near the Krušik factory. Today Valjevo was visited by Milomir Minić, President of the Citizens' Council at the National Assembly, and Dejan Kovačević, Minister of Urbanism. Together with local officials, they visited facilities that have been targets of this vicious NATO bombardment. Around 12 noon, three strong explosions shook Valjevo. During that time in Valjevo, there were tens of thousands of people walking through the streets and in the markets. In the middle of the day, this fascist alliance attacked the factory Krušik. Close to the factory, there were hundreds of workers trying to go through the rubble and clean it up from the previous bombardment. Half an hour later, NATO criminals attacked once again. In today's attack, 2 people have been severely injured. The criminal alliance attacked twice Vranje last night. The first attack came around 55 minutes after midnight, the second one around 3:30. 4 missiles exploded in the eastern part of town that has already been attacked several times. A lot of material damage to civilian facilities, many damaged roofs and broken windows in a residential area. There are many visible damages on the Agricultural Institute. Last night, around 9:10, which is somewhat earlier than usual customary attacks by NATO alliance, Kraljevo was again target. Out of the 10 missiles, several hit private houses. 2 missiles hit Gornji Lađici and Hemala villages, respectively. No injured persons were recorded because people had withdrawn from their houses. The attack would have lasted further if it hadn't been for the efficient air defense systems that forced the NATO criminals to flee soon after their second attack. 2 planes flying over the area commanded by the Major General Lazarević of the Pristina Corps, who was surveying the units, were hit by the anti-aircraft forces of Pristina Corps. These are parts of the American plane, type A-10 underboard, also known as tank blaster. This is the front of the engine and tells you that this was a direct hit right in the engine. And you can also see this from the armor of the engine area. You can see the opening that was created by the missile that hit this armor. This is the cooler of the engine. A-10 planes are with 2 engines, and they're armed by thermal-guided missiles. You can see also the ID plate here, the model number, A10A, manufacturer code, series number, and the code. The epilogue of the yesterday's beastly bombardment of Kosovska Mitrovica by NATO planes is a tragic one. 2 people are dead, 44 are injured. There has been huge material damage. All injured people, including some children among them, have been treated in the medical center in Kosovska Mitrovica. The aggressor alliance once again attacked the area of Bujanovac several times yesterday. One could hear the explosions from the south and the southeastern end of town, and you could hear them from 8 to 6 at night. Once again, international law has been violated. The aggressor dropped cluster bombs. These are examples, samples of what was left after today's bombardment. These are cluster bombs prohibited by the Geneva Convention, MK82. Here is an example. You can see a lot of them. These are the containers, how these bombs actually reach the ground. And you can see here that their shelf life was over 2 years ago. The victim of this attack with obsolete arms near Bujanovac was once again humanity. In the evil attack of the NATO alliance on the bus full of passengers yesterday on the road Peć-Rožaje, 20 civilians were dead, while 43 have been injured. The bus carried civilians, mainly women, children and older people. The aggressor fascist alliance has committed once more a crime against innocent civilians. On the road Kula-Rože near Savina Voda, they hit a bus full of passengers of all ethnicities, primarily women and children, going to Podgorica in Montenegro. According to our information, 20 people are dead, 40 some are injured. The rescue efforts are complicated by the continued flights of the aggressor planes in the area. The attack occurred around 12:30 when two planes dropped on several occasions numerous missiles, including cluster bombs that are forbidden. And you can see that this complicates the rescue efforts even further. The injured people were assisted immediately. 43 were transferred to the Peć clinic. According to the doctors, a number of people are in critical condition. Doctors are fighting for their lives. The criminal air force of NATO, commanded by the so-called Democrats from the West, showed its real face once again. After bombing the TV Serbia building in Belgrade, they have now attacked the TV Serbia building in Novi Sad. Radio Television Serbia was once again target of a barbaric attack of the criminals of the NATO alliance. Last night, sometime before 10 o'clock at night, these NATO murderers destroyed the building of TV Serbia along the Danube River. They completely destroyed the transmission unit, the antennas, the editorial rooms. There is total destruction behind. This is one more testimony of a shameful, merciless crime against our country, orchestrated by the mad fascist cliques in Washington and Brussels. By attacking TV station in Novi Sad, these demented executioners tried to silence the truth about their crimes, unprecedented in history. They wanted to kill the voice of the public, and specifically on the 3rd of May, the International Day of Freedom of the Press. During the moment of this attack on Novi Sad TV, fortunately, no employees were in the building. Firefighting teams have managed, after a short fight with the fire, to localize it. The material damage, however, is huge. The explosion damaged a lot of residential objects near TV. Fortunately, we have no civilian injuries. The bombing of the TV building in Novi Sad is a most abhorrent crime against the voice of the public, its dignity and its importance in today's world. This was stated at the meeting of the Minister of Information Aleksandar Vučić with the editors of the main Vojvodina press and electronic media. All representatives of the media in Vojvodina condemned this barbaric attack by the NATO aggressor. It was also noted that these daily assaults on the people and facilities of our country, committed by the NATO machinery, are going to fail to destroy the unity of our country. It was also stressed that these bombs, which destroyed the TV station that showed programs in 6 languages, cannot destroy the good inter-ethnic relations in Vojvodina. The media in Vojvodina